Hello, this is Robert Rickover at Body Learning, and today my guest is Betsy Politan, who is an Alexander Technique teacher in the Boston area. She is a master lecturer at Boston University College of Fine Arts, and she has been an Alexander Technique teacher for over 30 years and has recently written a book called The Actor's Secret, the subtitle being Techniques for Transforming Human Patterns and Improving Performance. And we're going to talk about that book and about Betsy's approach to teaching. Betsy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it's a pleasure talking to you as well. And before we get into the book and your work with actors and others, could you give our listeners a very short description or definition of the Alexander Technique?
Yeah, sure. I would say the Alexander Technique is a practical method for self-improvement. The technique cultivates ease of movement and increases well-being through neuromuscular re-education or body-mind re-education.
Okay, and
Yeah.
you had indicated earlier that you wanted to read the first paragraph, which is quite short,
Yep.
from the introduction because it, in a way, segues into your entire approach to teaching.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and read that? I've got the book in front of me so I can make sure you don't make any mistakes.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, so from the introduction. After my first Alexander lesson, I walked out of the room thinking, this is still me, but not the me I always knew. Actually, a very different me than I knew when I walked in. This brief experience of an altered sense of self excited and daunted me at the same time. I had moved through an opening, pulled aside an inner veil, and been exposed to radical new possibilities and choices of how I sensed myself and saw the world around me. My body felt less constricted, my mind was less worried, and my senses were more vibrant and alive. The colors of the world seemed brighter. As I walked along the street that day, I knew I was still me, but a different me, a new me.
Yeah, the sort of thing that I think Alexander Technique teachers sometimes get from new students after a first lesson. But I think also it would be good to say here that not everyone has quite that dramatic an experience
Yes, this is
initially.
true.
In
Yes.
my case, the drama, as it were, occurred in the week or so following the first lesson. And for some
Mm,
of my students, the drama doesn't really, I'm using drama in quotes
yeah,
here, doesn't really occur until maybe a week or two after starting lessons. Um, so
absolutely. We're all so different, with different
we're all
makeups.
different, and
Yeah,
some
yeah.
people are extremely sensitive to the work,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they may have that kind of experience in the first 5 minutes of a lesson.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
other students, it might take two or three lessons before they start really sensing the change, but
Right.
it doesn't. That only matters insofar as the likelihood of them staying for those two or three lessons to get to that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, often I think even if that major piece doesn't happen, some kind of spark of curiosity, emerges, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, could you say a little about how that initial experience of yours colors your work in working with actors, and I assume other students as well?
Yes. Well, that first lesson of mine was 36 years ago. And in that moment, as I look back on it, or even then, I the odd part is that it's me. I know it's me, but it's a different me. It's not the me that I always walk around with. So there's a realization that there's lots of different versions of me, and I can sort of go back and forth between the different versions. And of course, we all do this anyway, but without thinking about it. You know, the way you talk to your husband or wife or son or daughter, or taxi driver who drives by you and splashes water on you. We respond differently to different people.
Hmm.
and and so these different aspects of yourself are become evident when you start thinking about it, and then you take it one step further. For an actor, you actually need to become these different personalities, or different characters as they're called. And and to be able to do that, you need to have some awareness of your own identities or identifications, or what
Hmm.
you think about yourself.
So an actor needs to be able to to not only be able to express their own possible identities, but go into others as well that might be very alien to them.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's quite a skill. And it's
Yeah.
also can be a little tricky, if especially if the role they're going into has some features that they don't want to carry over into the rest of their lives. I'm
Absolutely.
thinking
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the movie version of The Hunchback of
Yeah.
Notre Dame,
Yes.
where
Yes.
Charles Lawton,
Lot.
who's a brilliant actor, and
Absolutely.
used some equipment to partly create the hunch, but he also had to distort himself quite a bit. And my
Absolutely.
understanding is that he overdid it and developed
Yep.
some serious back issues. So
Yes.
an
Yes.
actor's got to be able to step outside him or herself, but needs to also be able to return. I guess that might be
Yes.
one way of putting it.
Yes, a modern version of that is, well, two stories. One is, recently a former student of mine played the role in The Elephant Man, and that also includes a distortion of body. And
Hmm.
when I spoke to him after the show, he said, uh, "I I had to use everything you ever taught me in that role." So it, the Alexander technique can be so helpful. And
Hmm.
one other story is, uh, a young man was playing. This was at the Huntington Theater, a local regional theater here. He was playing a college student. He was older, but he played a college student, and he had to sit on a couch and sort of lean down in the couch, like, may I, if I may say, some college students do, sort of slumped over.
Hmm.
And after 2 days of rehearsal, his back was killing him. And so he
Hmm.
came to me for a session, and we sorted out how to stay in that position but not have the extreme holding that one would normally have. And that's what the Alexander technique is so good for, is to find some space inside different positions.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
guess, I mean, one way of describing the Alexander technique in general terms is it helps you do whatever you're going to do with greater ease and comfort. And if what you're
Yeah.
going to do is deliberately and consciously distort your body for a
Yeah.
purpose, in this case
Yeah.
acting,
Yeah.
you can do that with greater ease with a bit of training and
Right.
understanding of
Yeah.
how your body works. What is it that drew you to be particularly interested in working with actors?
Well, it kind of came sort of as life sometimes does. 'Cause it came from, a sort of not my, it wasn't my idea.
Hmm.
I was doing quite a bit of work with musicians. I was teaching at the Berklee College of Music, guest teaching there, and New England Conservatory. And somebody from the Boston University Conservatory called me and said, "We're thinking about having an Alexander Technique class." And I thought, "Oh, okay."
Hmm.
And I went in and I basically auditioned. They had me teach some students, and it went well. And they said, "Would you like to teach here?" And I said, "Sure," because I enjoy very much working with performers
Hmm.
in general. And one of the major things that happens for me that I've noticed over the years when working with performers is that often they have a feeling inside that says, somewhere deep inside says, I know I can do this. I can be really good singer, dancer, musician, actor. I know that inside. And yet, it doesn't always come out in performance. I can
Mm-hmm.
do it at
Mm-hmm.
home when I practice, but then I go to rehearsal and it just doesn't happen. So a part that's very interesting to me, which carried over from the music into the acting in terms of performance, is what's in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you able to, do the monologue at home and then go into rehearsal, or go from rehearsal to the stage? All those steps get interfered with and take one away from that place inside that says, I know I can be a really good actor. I know I can nail this. And so that part was a through line in my work. Like, what's in the way? Why isn't this happening like you wanted to?
Exactly. And I tend to work a lot with musicians, although I'm
Mm-hmm.
certainly not one myself.
Uh-huh.
And when, for example, I'm working with singers, the question always comes up, well, how come I can sing so well in the shower, but when
Yeah.
I get on stage, there are restrictions. I can't
Yeah.
really sing at my full potential. And there's kind of that term, stage fright,
Rest.
which is, I guess it's a valid term, but it doesn't really help you that much in in terms of changing that dynamic. You need to
Right.
actually have some processes you can use, of
Ab-
course, and that's what the Alexander technique gives you. And I assume it's the
Absolutely.
same
Yeah.
thing. I'm sure it's the same thing for actors as
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
dancers, or any
Yeah.
performers. And
Yeah.
and just to extend it a bit, it's probably true for all of us. Let's say we
Absolutely.
have an important interview
A
coming up,
job interview.
a job
Absolutely.
interview,
Yep. Yep.
and we
Yep.
have a really clear idea of what we want to get
Yep. Yep.
across.
Yep.
We may have practiced it a bit with
Yep.
someone we
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and it sounds
And
great, and we
yeah.
get there, and the
And
pressure's
bam.
on, and
Yep.
there it goes.
And again, that brings up, a big piece of the Alexander work is stimulus and response. I'm stimulated in this situation, and how do I respond? And in the Alexander technique, we have that moment between stimulus and response where I can have a choice. I can change my response. And that's so valuable in the, even in the instance you're giving in the job interview.
Yeah, and when you say change our response, it's basically some very specific mental directions that a teacher
A-
can give you and
Absolutely.
show you with their hands as well. So
Yes. Yes.
you with a bit of practice, you can bring them to bear pretty much whenever you want.
Absolutely.
And of
And
course, yeah, yeah.
and
Go
that
ahead.
includes, I was going to say, that includes some directions of doing and some directions of non-doing, and
Hmm.
both are important.
Hmm.
Saying no to the habitual pattern in order to say yes to something else, which is very freeing in life and on the stage.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would think another reason why some teachers are drawn to working with performers, sort of a more practical one from a teacher's point of view, is certainly musicians, and I guess actors as well, are totally used to the idea of coming for lessons.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like some odd thing in their experience. And
Right.
whereas
Training.
people
Yeah.
with back pain and so on, they're more used to going to doctors
Yes. Different
and or
different
physical
mindset.
therapists or whatever.
Yeah.
So they do tend to be, and plus they're highly motivated.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
highly motivated.
And another thing is, especially with musicians, or like a singer will sing a song, and then I work or you work with them for 2, 3 minutes, and they sing again, and the difference is so, palatable. You can hear it, you can see it, you can feel it. It's just and they're aware, like, wow, that's what I want. So
Hmm.
it's kind of quick, which
It can be very
can
quick
be
with
can be.
performers. Yeah,
Yes. So
absolutely.
that's exciting.
So, I, I, for an actor or aspiring actor listening to our talk today, um, could you, in a nutshell, tell them why they might do well to explore having some lessons in the Alexander technique? Just very quickly,
Yeah,
what would
yeah.
be the
I would
benefit?
uh, let me maybe give an example. I
Hmm.
think that's stories are always nice.
Hmm.
Uh, we all have a way we walk. We have kind of a signature walk. And if someone, I see my friend in the distance, I know that's my friend because I see their shoulders are a little bit forward or one arm are swinging, their signature walk. And I can identify my friend because I know that walk. And yet, for an actor, you need to be able to change that walk to become another character.
Hmm.
And so the Alexander technique helps you bring awareness to your own habitual walk and then make a choice about, do I want to continue doing that? And of course, if I'm playing another character, the answer is no. I need to stop hunching forward or stop moving that one arm so that someone does not recognize me
Hmm.
as myself, but then I take on the life, the imaginary circumstances of the character that I'm playing, and my walk becomes different. And
Right. Yeah.
that
And
that's what you want.
you need to be able to do that quickly and with very
Yes,
little effort uh,
absolutely.
to, to to be effective. So
Absolutely.
the looking at your book, it does seem as though you're well. The title of the book is The Actor's Secret, but it does seem to also be a book for people who are not actors,
Yes.
and that you're really reaching out to a much more general audience. So,
Yes.
for example, I
Because
mean,
we're all actors. Let
we're
me throw
all
that out.
actors, and we talked
Yes.
about the job interview situation,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
a lot of people who are not performers who end up seeing an Alexander Technique teacher come from my experience, for one of two reasons. One, they're in pain,
Yeah, big one.
back
Yeah.
pain, neck pain, so on. And the other is that they have come to believe, or maybe people have told them, that their posture needs improvement.
Yes.
Those are the two
Yes.
things I see all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes people come for balance issues,
Yes.
breathing
Yeah.
issues, but those two,
Breathing.
posture
Yeah.
and pain, are
Yep.
really up there at the top. Now, what
Yep.
would you say to someone who feels their, let's start with the posture part, feels their posture is not what it should be?
Well, yeah, I would show, basically have them look at more closely at what their posture is, what they're doing,
Hmm.
and then take a look at sort of where they want to go with it. Like how much, like some people are comfortable with a certain degree of uprightness or good posture, and others sort of want a lot of good posture. Like where's the comfort level? So where do you want to be, and then how do you get there?
Hmm.
So, we use the Alexander directions, letting your neck be free so your head frees away. So when your head frees toward the ceiling, you just automatically come a bit more upright.
Hmm.
And
And
I also talk a lot about support from the ground and the ground supporting you. And that gives you a sense of ease and uprightness also.
and what the Alexander technique does not do is tell you to stand up straight or sit up straight,
Exactly. Yeah.
which is
The common. Yeah.
very common and extraordinarily ineffective, really.
Exactly.
So, and then for the second group, people who are having pain, and it typically, again, in my experience, the people who are drawn to take Alexander lessons have explored other ways of dealing with that pain. They've been through the medical system, they've been to
Yes.
physical therapy, they may have had chiropractic adjustments. They're often on sometimes quite dramatically high doses of
Yes.
painkillers.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone in that situation? Why might they be drawn to why might they find the technique a useful thing to explore.
Yeah, I think, my experience is when people that the category that you're talking about come in, one of the things that I do with them is point out to them what they're doing, and often people have no idea how they're standing or inhabiting or being in themselves. Somebody can be, standing and leaning into one hip all the time, and they have no idea, and they wonder why their hip hurts or that
Mm-hmm.
one leg hurts, or they stand with their back very arched, in a big curve at their lower
Mm-hmm.
back,
Right.
and they have no idea that they're doing it, and partially bringing their awareness to what they're actually doing and how they're moving. And I do use a mirror. I mean, yesterday I had a new student, and he came in and he was standing, and I said, and he had back pain, and he said, oh, this is how I stand. And I had him turn and look in the mirror, and his shoulder area was so forward in relation to his hips, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know I was doing that." And so, in that moment, something of just seeing that and realizing it is so helpful.
Yeah, and you might
And
think that you would see that yourself in a mirror, but we're so used
right,
to looking straight on, and we tend to be looking at mirrors from the point of view of shaving or combing our hair,
right,
and
or
so we
how
don't.
the outfit looks.
So it is possible to have an extraordinarily bizarre ways of standing and moving that everyone around you notices and
Yes, yes,
just
yes.
says, "Oh, that's so and so," but you could be completely unaware of it.
Absolutely.
That's what's kind of
Yes. Yeah.
amazing.
And
And
again, back to the actor,
mhm.
that's so valuable because you're standing on stage and you're leaning into one hip or scrunching your eyebrows and you don't know it, and everybody else knows it, and the character would never do that. So we don't believe you, and that's a big issue.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're kind of coming, I think, probably towards the end of our time, but is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to mention?
I think one of the we've touched it a bit, but I think one of the most important ideas, especially in the book, is that, and it's called The Actor's Secret. I think one of the secrets is that you have a choice. And in life or on stage, you can choose to carry on in your habitual way, or you can say no to the habit and allow a space for something else to emerge or for something else to happen. And I think that sort of gift that the Alexander technique teaches you is so valuable, like I say, whether on stage or in life, that, wait a minute, I can make a different choice here, is so valuable in my opinion.
I guess one could define the Alexander technique as the gift of choice.
Yeah, that sounds
I
good.
never thought of
Yeah,
that before, but
yeah, yeah.
well, my guest today has been Betsy Politan. She's a Alexander Technique teacher in the Boston area, and she works a lot with actors. And she's written a book called The Actor's Secret: Techniques for Transforming Habitual Patterns and Improving Performance. But I would recommend this book to anybody who would like to move, stand, sit, whatever, with greater ease, or anyone who's in has chronic pain and hasn't been able to fix that with the medical side of things. So, Betsy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Robert. It's very thrilling and exciting to talk about this work with you and share it with the public.